Hello again. Today is the 5th June as I am recording this 2024, and tomorrow morning where I live is the new moon in Gemini, and at the moment there is a huge, what astrologers call stellium, what my friend Kaylin Castell calls a party in Gemini, a huge lineup, and the planets all lined up, like 6 planets lined up, and various degrees of conjunction there. And this is interesting. It's an interesting energy. New moons are always a really good time to set an intent as well as intentions. Is there a difference? Yes. Intentions tend to be more mental. Intent comes from the heart and the spirit and all of that in alignment. And as this is a rather major alignment, it's a good time for that. It's a good time to set a fresh intent. At one point, I went through a few years where I would sort of cut and paste, and one could say want the same things over and over until I realized, well, let's look at how that is manifesting, might be manifesting, instead of how it is not. Duh, right? But this particular alignment isn't about that. Because it's in Gemini, the sign of Gemini, the symbol for the sign of Gemini is 2 upright pillars capped, right? It looks like a Roman numeral 2. And depending on how the artist writes the sign, the symbol, it's straight caps or I can't do that, or they're curved. But it's still the 2 pillars. Now, the symbol of 2 pillars has much metaphysical history. There was, for a time, much talk about the 1111 being an alignment. It's a portal that one can pass through, and this is one of the metaphysical ramifications of this symbol. The other thing that the sign of Gemini tends to be about is communication. It's a quickness. It's an air sign. There's a moving forward. And for many of us who have become a little or a lot impatient, that's really good. That energy feels really good. It's an uplifting kind of energy. It can feel pushing, it can feel enervating, and that can impact our auras, our nervous systems, making us feel shaky. A lot of people have reported to me they're feeling shaky right now. It's because of the intensity of the energy, not the quality of it necessarily. There are lots of new frequencies pouring, infusing into Gaia and all of her aspects, and if we relax into the light that we are, into our essence, into our source essence, it knows what to do. Our minds do not at this point. So, back to the pillars. This is a classic metaphysical structure. It's the 2, the either or, the opposites, the coming together. But do they come together? Even Boaz and Jachin in front of the Temple of Solomon hold steady, hold as guardians. Do they come together? Well, is there not a trinity formed with the temple? Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. What do you believe? There's a famous saying, as they believe, so it is for them. And in all of my studies and all of my training, I have found this to be true. Our belief systems, our thought patterns, and our habits of behavior largely determine the experience of our circumstances. Do we create everything that's going on around us? No, of course not. But our experience of it, how we feel about it, how we move through it. And moving through is a very pillar kind of alignment. What I've been experiencing internally is a review, a recapitulation, and a very, very intense restructuring of where is there an either or here? This and this, and they're like the opposite ends of a battery. They don't come together. And one of them, which is quite surprising, was there was a deeply held genetic bloodline pattern. This is just in me, might be in you, might not, of magic and miracles. Not versus miracles, not a G versus E thing, but these were separate constructs and they had not integrated. Now, mentally and in my source essence, I may or may not have understood this for a long time, but there was an essence in the genetics of magic is this, miracles are this. Why are they not the energy of the light, the love, the manifestations that come from nature, that come through all of us? Is that not the same thing? Of course it is. But how were these differently defined? And I was musing on this juxtaposition I was feeling in my cellular structures. And I came upon something in writing, which happens to me a lot, where there are two sentences and they defined it perfectly. I said, oh, okay, there's the box and label I was looking for. What if during this time, the coming through of the pillars has to do with letting go of how structured, how rigid these things are. You know, as you may or may not know, I'm a great proponent of fluidity, of embodying that in all the ways our source essence wants to do that. But what is it that has compelled us to create these rigid stances that move into polarity? Well, one could say it's duality. We live in a duality construct. I would refute that. We do not live in one. We have allowed ourselves to be informed, to be placed within a structure like this that functions this way. It is a circumstance. And there's much to be said. You can't fight City Hall. Why buck the system? Well, at this point, the way things are going, why not? This is all internal. The changes must happen internally first. And what really does bring us through is hope, joy, love. You know, there's a phase that one goes through in the enlightenment process where both doubt and hope dissolve in those current forms. Our boxes and labels, how we have defined and conceptualized those energies. This is what seems to be dissolving at the moment for all of us. How are our concepts that stand like this? How are our concepts dissolving? And how is that scary? Now, I found my own body doing this weird thing that she doesn't normally do, this startle response, where, for example, my housemate walked into the kitchen. I knew she was in the house. I knew she was downstairs. What was the big deal? And my body went when she said hello. It's a startle response that's very unusual. And I've been noticing it and tracking it, and that comes from, at least in this case, a physically held fear of which I was unaware. Now, why is that important? The fear vibration is an attracting vibration. It will pull to us what we fear, and it also takes up the space that our source essence and the love that flows through us needs. Our light needs that space. So if you consider a program, whether it's the matrix or whether it's the illusion of reality or whatever you call it, consider a program. You write code to perform specific functions. When one breaks, the functions get a little wonky, or it's just taking up space in that box that's needed for something else. So you do a where used search. Where is that function called ever? And then a cascade delete, meaning delete all the instances of it. There are ways to do this in consciousness. And it's not so much a delete anymore as an upgrade, as letting the source essence that we are shift those patterns and programs and probabilities so that our inner circumstances shift, especially the unconscious ones, the ones we were unaware of, and then things start to change in the physical world. Little by little, perhaps. This month, June 2024, is an existential shift in perception. I would say crisis, but it isn't. This is all being done with us, through us, for our benefit. So as we relax into that and notice, these two things seem to be this way somehow. It's not a good or a bad thing. It's just as we believe, so our circumstances manifest. As we believe, so things are for us. Why not alter the belief system, which is just a thought pattern we argue for. It has benefit somehow. why not shift it? And it's letting that source essence that we are shift it, not our personal will, not the ego, not any agenda, not what we are in our minds think is right, because rarely is that ever the case. Just letting all of that dissolve into this, and letting this turn into something more fluid, which is the Aquarian energy we're moving into. And it is the heart. As we center in the heart, as the heart center works with the other centers, however you see them, however you define them, we become whole, we become more infused, more integrated, which is the point, if there is one. Thank you for listening.